I'm Richard Lowe with Author Talk for Richard Lowe. We're here with Clare Flynn. She's a writer, and we're going to talk to her for a little while now. Hi, Clare. How are you today?
Hi, Richard. I'm absolutely fine. Really, thank you very much for inviting me on the show. I'm really looking forward to talking with you.
Well, it was my pleasure, and I'd like to tell the audience we're talking to Clare Flynn, who's a historical novelist. She's writing terrific novels on similar themes about women migrating to other countries. She's a classic example of someone who's comfortable with marketing from her day job career, who's now applying the same skills to her writing career, and she's very prolific. She's also a great artist and travels a lot seeking inspiration for her novels. Thank you, Clare. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So why don't we start with, what is your story?
Okay. Well, my background, Richard, was in marketing. I started off going along the conventional route through big corporates, international, worked my way up to group marketing director, and then switched over to working for myself. I'd had enough of the corporate treadmill and decided it would be much more fun doing my own thing. So I did that for about 15 years and working mainly doing strategy consulting, but also doing work around creativity and helping organizations to revitalize their culture and become more creative and innovative. So I did that until about 2 years ago when I moved away from London and decided I'd had enough of doing all of this for other people, and I thought I'd pour some of the creative skills I'd taught other people into my own work. And I started writing from being a child, and I'd always wanted to write a novel. I'd had several attempts while I was still in the corporate world, but I was traveling all over the world all the time, working long hours, and I just didn't have enough headspace, or I believed I didn't. And in fact, if I have one regret now, it's that I didn't make the time, because there are a lot of things that I did do and I could have made more time for writing. But anyway, I took probably about 10 years to write my first novel because I was fitting it in around other stuff. And so about 2-3 years ago, I decided enough, I'm going to be 100% dedicated to writing. So I moved out of London. I now live by the sea. I can actually see it from my kitchen windows, which is glorious. And I'm free to write all day. Well, in theory, I'm free to write all day, but a large proportion of my time is actually spent doing what I've always done, which is marketing.
I understand.
So that's my story then. I first, in terms of actually my writing journey then, I began down the traditional route. I managed to get myself an agent. I think that was probably around 2012, 2013. And she was so helpful with my first book, A Greater World. And she helped me, gave me a lot of feedback that helped me make it a better book, until she was happy enough to start punting it around. And that's where things just didn't work for me. I got a lot of interest, or she got a lot of interest in my book, but nobody actually bought it. And it was the usual story of it doesn't fit within our portfolio, or we've got another author that we're pushing strongly in that genre, or I love it, but I can't sell it to the marketing department, that kind of thing. So in the end, by then I'd wasted, I felt, 2 years. So I decided I was going to go it alone. And I'd read a lot about self-publishing, and I was quite excited by the prospect of doing it. So I thought, have a go, nothing to lose. So with her encouragement, I did that. And I was floundering around for a while until I guess this was now June 2014. And then sometime in that summer, I stumbled across the Alliance of Independent Authors. And that was such a fantastic thing, because immediately I realized I wasn't alone. And I felt as if I'd been really welcomed into a warm and growing community of people who would just do so much to help and offer advice. So by October, I published my second book, which incidentally my agent hadn't loved, as she put it. So I'd always known that that wasn't going to find a home through her. So and I started to get, I'd sold the odd book. It was very, very slow. But meanwhile, I was learning a lot more about some of the techniques and some of the things that I should be avoiding in terms of formatting. I also found, I was so lucky, I found a great cover designer who's also in the Alliance of Independent Authors, Jane Dixon-Smith, and she's done all my covers ever since, and I absolutely love them. She's done a fantastic job. So yes, I through them I discovered a proofreader, I got my formatting done, all manner of things that were really helpful. But most of all, I think it was the morale boost of talking to other people and experiencing the generosity of them, so that I would have a problem with formatting and somebody would say, hey, send it to me and I'll fix it for you. So that kind of thing was just amazing.
Very interesting talking to a book author who likes to market. That's not normal.
Well, I wouldn't say I like it. Well, I mean, I did like it. Obviously, it was my vocation, and I really liked it. I spent my life doing it. But now, it's still the thing that I'd much rather be writing than doing the marketing. Because it does feel, especially when you're doing it for yourself, I think no matter who you are, it is always, oh God, I've got to bang the drum or wave the flag to talk about me, me, me. And I feel very reluctant. I'm like you, I'm an introvert and I don't like doing that. But you have to just to grin and bear it. And the advantage I've got is I do have some knowledge and expertise in that area that I can bring to bear. And I'm also fortunate in that I actually like social media rather too much, unfortunately.
Yes, that's normal.
Yeah, so it's, I keep saying to myself, if it wasn't for my books, I'd just drop it all. I'd come out of social media. But I know I wouldn't, because, I've got friends and family all the way to Australia and the States and everywhere. And social media really, really does help bring all of that together. And, I've discovered new friends. I've discovered a whole pile of relatives in Ireland that I didn't know I had. So, and I'm going to see them in a couple of months, which will be fun. So, yeah, I love to hate it, shall we say.
I understand. So what is your favorite memory about writing?
Oh, I'd say my favorite experience that I had was with my second book, which is set in India. And I'd written it, and as I say, my agent wasn't enthused by it. And I thought, I really need, it's fine, but I don't think I've breathed enough colour and life into it. The idea for it had come to me while I was actually in India on a painting holiday. And I couldn't sleep one night, and the bones of the story came to my head, and I scribbled them all down. And then as soon as I got home, I started to write the book. But I felt that, I was trying to write it with my memories of India. And yes, I had some paintings I'd done, I had photographs, but I hadn't been making notes about the actual nuts and bolts of the place. So I decided I would go back, and I was fortunate enough to be able to, I'm lucky that I could afford to go and do that, because I know a lot of people can't. So I decided to go to live on a tea plantation, just as my character would have done. So I found a 1920s tea manager's bungalow, which became then the model for the home of my main character. This is the book, Korinji Flowers.
Awesome.
So I spent 2 weeks. I got there, and serendipitously, this place I was staying in had just had $1 million transformation to become a wonderful guest house. But I was the only guest those 2 weeks. So I had the place plus 10 staff entirely to myself. Plus, a couple of gardeners who were out there trimming the lawns and keeping everything looking beautiful. So it was a very happy memory because all I was doing was writing, walking, painting, sketching, taking notes, taking photographs, and I'd go out in a Land Rover to explore different places. But being the only person in the hotel, then in the evenings, I would read books or watch old movies because they had the most amazing collection of old videos of great old, Hollywood movies of the 1940s. So it was a very, very happy time. And I think I got such a lot out of that because I did a lot of free writing, just writing down what I saw, what I heard, smells, sights, tastes, listening to birds, flowers, all of that kind of thing. And then I was able to feed that back into the fabric of the book.
Yeah, I find it interesting how writers, when they go on vacation and they hole up in the hotel or sit on the beach and write. Most people, they're out drinking or something. And
oh no, I do that. But actually, this particular 2 weeks, it was up in the tea country in Kerala, and Kerala is a dry state. Okay. So I didn't even have so much as a beer. I was just living on cups of tea and lots of water.
I understand. So tell me, why did you choose your genre?
By accident, really. I didn't say, I want to be a historical novelist. I just knew I wanted to be a novelist. And the first book I started to write was back in, I think it was about 1990, when I was still working for a big American multinational. And that was a thriller, and it was set in Istanbul, where I'd been many times on business trips. But I abandoned it after about 4 chapters. And unfortunately, I don't have it anymore because it's on a floppy disk. So it will have long ago corrupted. So this time I'd been to Australia, and I've got family over there. My brother lives there. And I thought I would really like to write a book about Australia, and I wanted it to be set in the Blue Mountains. So I thought, right, well, I'll just start writing it. And it came out as being historical because I didn't have any idea of the plot when I began. I didn't have any idea of the characters. I just started writing. And they just happened to be, I thought they were going to be Victorian at first, but they ended up 1920. And then having done that first book, I just decided I loved it. And I love it for probably 2 primary reasons. First of all, I think the fact that it's historical gives a distance. And I kind of like that distance, the fact that it separates me in a way as an author, but I can still, travel in time, if you like. And the second reason is that I actually really enjoy doing the research. And again, it means that it's quite a balanced life between doing the marketing, doing the writing, and doing all the research in between, which involves a lot of reading primarily. So and it's strange because I did study history at school, but not at university. And even though I did it to A level, which is the English equivalent, the graduation from high school level, so it was one of my specializations, but I hated it. I absolutely hated it because I had really lousy teachers. and the syllabus was very heavy and very turgid. Whereas now I just absolutely love everything about it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
especially 20th century history now.
I understand. Too much they focus on dates and just facts about history instead of focusing on the stories. And that's one reason why I like historical
Absolutely.
fiction, is you focus on the stories of people.
Yes, exactly. It's all about people. And I felt that, the history I learned was, I did English, American and European history. So it was all, kings and queens, dates of battles, and then, in the case of American history, all the different, the various things leading up to slavery and the sections and all of that. So lots of, again, battles and treaties and arguments and civil war, but none of it, all related to the kind of progression of the politics, and nothing about the human side of it and the social side of it.
Indeed, indeed. So it sounds like you're a pantster. There's always an argument. Do you write by seat of the pants, or do you write by plotting? I'm a pantser myself.
I would say now I'm a plantser.
Okay.
In that I do a bit of both. As I said, that first book took me 10 years and I got into all kinds of messes. And I think since then I've got much more organized. And the book I'm about to write is, I have done quite a long outline, but I haven't quite finished the outline. It's taken me through probably 2/3 of the book, but I've left some of it open. And it's funny because I was at a conference this weekend, and there was, I've forgotten his name, a speaker who was talking about how he and his business partner, writing partner, decided to set out to write a Kindle bestseller, and they achieved it. And he was, and they have a podcast. Can't remember the name. It's terrible. I'll see if I can find it while we're talking. And he was saying that he, as part of the development of all of this, they had a podcast. And by the end of this whole process leading up to writing this bestseller, they had written a 50,000 word outline. And they hadn't written a single word of the book. And they had Ben Aronovich on the show, and he said to them, and I actually wrote it down, the podcast is called The Bestseller Experience. And his quote was, "There is no fucking outline, just write." 50,000 words for an outline is kind of somewhat excessive. So I don't go anywhere near that. I just do basically the nuts and bolts of how the timeline will progress more than anything, because in my experience, the thing that I've found can be most problematic is timelines and dates, in that, you can have somebody who, say, becomes pregnant, and then you've got to make sure that you give her sufficient time to gestate the baby. Otherwise you can get into all manner of problems. So yes, ages and dates and so now I try to at least have some kind of mapping out of that in advance.
Yeah, I create an outline for my books, and then usually by the time I get to the end, it's completely different.
Yes. Well, that's it. I was listening to a creative writing tutor who was asked the question. She was talking about the importance of outlining, and the question was, what happens if you suddenly, as you're writing, want to go in a different direction? And she said, don't do it. Stick with the outline, finish it, and then go back and write the other book. And I so disagree with that, because I think writing is a real dynamic process. And if you get pulled in another direction, there's usually a very good reason for it. And quite often it's the characters who, they often have a mind of their own. And I think I just hate the idea of it being a rigid process so that it completely entraps you. Although I think having a structure is good.
Yeah, I usually sit down and just plot out the outline in a few minutes, and then I often write the end first, real loosely,
Yes,
and then work
yes,
forward. And then by the time I'm to the end, it's changed, but at least I know where I'm going.
yes, exactly. That does help.
Yes.
Yes, I think you need to just look at it as a roadmap.
So
Then,
you're in the Alliance of Independent Authors. What
yes.
tips do you have to authors in that group or other groups that would help them in their writing careers?
Well, I would say that the fundamental thing is, particularly starting out, to really, really focus on the craft and the writing. There's a lot of talk now about, in order to succeed, you have to have, a book a month and keep churning them out and churning them out, and it's a numbers game. And that's all very well as long as you are able to churn out a quality product. And I know I certainly couldn't churn out a book that anybody would want to read in a month. Having said that, my first book took me 10 years, the second one took me 10 months, and I am getting much faster. If somebody said you need to have this book ready to roll within 2 to 3 months, 90,000 words, I could do it. But I have worked long and hard, and I've already produced 8 books to get to the point where I can do that. So I would say start by really trying to write the best book you possibly can, and then move on to develop, think about the marketing once you've got a product that is worth marketing. Because with one of the fundamental things about marketing is it all begins with the product. And I think people too often forget that.
Understood. Speaking of writing, what tips do you have for writers to fight writer's block?
I don't believe in writer's block.
Good.
I think if you, and that's not to say I don't suffer from it, I just refuse to call it that. But I do have periods where I just think I can't do it. I can't sit down and write it. I don't know what to say. I know what I've got to write, but I just don't know where to even begin. And the only way to get around that is to just put your butt in a chair, stare at the screen, or hold the pen in your hand and do not move until you've got something down. Even if it's only a sentence, once you've got that sentence, just keep going. And I can do that and think, oh my God, I am writing such utter drivel. But 9 times out of 10, when I come back and read it, it isn't actually utter drivel. So it's just forcing yourself through, punching through that resistance, because the resistance is all in here.
What I found is the common cause of writer's block, there's several causes, is trying to edit while you write.
Yes, that's true. It isn't that so much with me, because I quite like editing as I write. I am a bit anal about editing, and I certainly, when I'm in the swing of things, I tend to start, when I start a new day, I will tend to read what I've read in the previous day to push me into it, so that I can get right back in the zone. And yes, I do correct as I go, but you're right. If you just get so much to the point that you're agonizing over every word in every sentence, it does cause paralysis. You just have to plow through that and get the words on the page, and then go worry about the editing.
Yeah, a coach told me writing and editing takes 2 different parts of your brain, basically.
Yeah, that's true.
You do your writing first with some mild editing as you go, and I use dictation. I use voice dictation. And then you edit, and you use different parts of your brain and your mind.
Yeah,
work.
I think that's true, but I also do see editing as a creative process in itself. There is the analytical side, which will be doing things like checking the grammar and things like word repetition and all that sort of stuff. But it's also, to me, it's creative in the sense of, is there a better way that I could be saying this? Is there a better word that I could use than this one? Mm-hmm. Oh, that sounds like a cliche. I need to really ache my brain to find something that isn't a cliche. that kind of thing. And to me, that's a creative process. And therefore, if you believe left brain, right brain, that's very much a right brain exercise.
Well, I don't necessarily buy the left brain, right brain
No.
thing, but different areas of your mind, so to speak. It's a different focus. Editing is
Yes.
more of,
Yeah.
it's, you know, it is creative. It's very creative. I've often changed the entire chapter while I'm editing. But anyway, what methods of promotion do you recommend for writers?
I think different things work for different people. So I would say try lots of things. Don't attempt to try them all at once. Have a go. If it's working, keep doing it. If it isn't, move on to something else. And I think I would say there are two types of promotions. There are those that are very much focused around selling a book immediately. So advertising and price reduction are the classic examples of that. And then there are those that are more about building saliency and awareness for you as an author and of your books. And I think you need to do both of those. So building your awareness and your profile as an author means that you do need to do social media, even though there are lots of instances where you can't prove that it's ever sold a book. I think I have actually sold a lot of books through social media, but I can't quantify that in a way that I can with other routes. But it has helped me to network with other authors, which has led to invitations to do things like talk to wonderful people like you.
Well, thank you.
Which will hopefully get me exposure to other people who might just say, well, that sounds interesting, I'll have a look at her books. So, and it gets you to be more known so that you can turn up at an event and people will start to say, oh, yes, I've heard of you. And that has increasingly begun to happen to me, whereas at the beginning I just thought, oh, nobody will ever get to know who I am. So, yes, so I think everything has its place. And I think that's true also of blogging. People say, oh, well, blogging is a waste of time. And I don't do it nearly as much as I probably should do, simply because it is quite an onerous process and it does distract from the writing. But I do try to keep doing it occasionally. And if somebody invites me to do a piece on their blog, I always say yes, because that's extending my reach into other places. And I find that most people who do that are generous. I would always share what, you know, if I appear on a blog, I'll always share that as widely as I can through social media. And most of the hosts who have you on do the same things for you. So you're getting out to reach different people. So I don't think I've ever turned down a request to guest on somebody else's blog or whatever.
I'm going to keep that in mind.
Oh no! But yes, no, I just did a piece just this week, which I didn't really have time to, but you make the time to do it because I think it's important.
If you had to recommend one promotional method, just one that writers who are starting out should do, what would you do?
Oh gosh, keep trying to get a book bub, because if once you do, that's transformative. I think, yeah, that's the best thing I've ever done. I've only had one, but that it really caused a step change. And I think it took me 15 attempts to get there, and I'm probably almost that into trying for another one. And they keep saying no, but you just have to keep plugging away because it's highly competitive, but it's also very expensive, but I found I earned the money back on the same day.
Yeah, I got one book bub and I earned back about 10 times what it cost.
Exactly.
I think I sold 10,000 copies of my book in 2 days.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
So that would be my number one slot. But then if you can't get a book bub, I would say doing a price reduction and using other, there are lots of other vehicles to use, e-read and use today, bargain booksy, there's a number of them. And if you can build up several of those, and obviously they're much, much cheaper than BookBub, although not nearly as cost effective. But when I launched my third book, Letters from a Patchwork Quilt, I couldn't get a BookBub, and I don't know whether I just struck lucky in the combination of promotional vehicles I used, but I sold, bearing in mind that at that time I was selling probably maybe 30 books a month, like a book a day. And then with that promotion, I sold 800 books.
Wow.
In a 4-day period, which was amazing. And that was with a turn down, a slap in the face from BookBub. So I haven't managed to get, relative, okay, I've got lots more books and the level of sales is much higher now. But I think I must have just struck particularly lucky that time. All the things conspired together. But yes, with a combination, you can get some definite decent numbers from doing that. So yes, reducing the price to get trial, and hopefully, I mean, I don't tend to write series. I have one book. I'm about to launch the trilogy from it, probably in September. But otherwise, all my books are standalone, which kind of goes against the received wisdom of the marketplace and the gurus who all say you need to write series. But I suppose my books are quite thematically linked. But I think I have managed to create a style that readers recognize. So people do go and seek out all my books. And if I look on Amazon at the also boughts, on most of my books, the also boughts feature at least 4 of my other books on the first page. So there is very good sell-through.
Good. Yeah, I found the solution for promotion that I use is just to be out there, to always have my face and my books out there.
Yes.
And not to be saying, buy my book, but to be saying, here's who I am, here's how I can help you, here's what can I do for you, and be more of a member of a community than a salesperson.
Absolutely.
Like salespeople.
Absolutely. I think that's dead right. I also try to, wherever possible, go out of my way to help other authors. And I'm in a critique group where we all help each other with the craft side. We each sort of submit once a week and, tear each other's work to pieces constructively. But in that, they always sort of say, oh, Claire, can you tell us how do we do this? How do we do that? And I always try to help. And other people who've kind of contacted me and said, how do you do it? And I always try to reach out and help them. I even had a day at my house and invited 5 other authors so that we could all share ideas. We spent the day critiquing each other's covers, going through each other's websites. We did an exercise where I broke us all into pairs and we helped improve each other's blurbs, etc. And that kind of thing I think can be very, very useful. And you can do it remotely if you haven't got anybody close by physically. You can use Zoom or Skype or whatever to reach out to people.
Yeah, it's still amazing to me that we're doing an interview and you're all the way in the UK and I'm in the United States, different time zones. We're like 8 hours apart and we're talking as if we were next door to each other.
Exactly. I feel as if we are in the same room.
Pretty much.
Yes.
What do you like about being an author? What's your favorite thing?
I think what I like most is being able to control my own destiny, design my own days. I can get up and decide, right, I'm going to spend the entire day in my pajamas just writing. or I can decide to go out on a recce or go to research something specifically. I can do basically what I want. And the other thing, all my life I used to want to find a way to make money while you sleep, and that's what you can do when you're an author. Maybe not as much money as I would like, but it's all moving in the right direction. And yeah, that's lovely to go to bed and then wake up in the morning and see how many books you sold while you'd be fast asleep.
It is interesting, isn't it?
It's great. Yes. Yes.
Yes. Do you have pretty much bringing this interview to a close? Do you have any remarks to finish?
No, I think I would say. Oh, the other thing that I guess I should mention is I've just become what we call a hybrid, in that having published 7 novels and a collection of short stories myself, I've now signed a contract for another book. So the next book I write will be under contract for a publisher. And I've done that less because I didn't set out to do it. They approached me, and after doing a lot of research, I decided it made sense. And I'm doing it basically to see what I can learn from it, and to see if they can do what they can do that they can do better than I can do. And I've not committed to do any more than that. Well, I've committed for one book to be that I've already got out there, for them to repackage that and relaunch it. And then the book I'm writing will be a sequel to that. So I think that will be a very interesting piece of learning, even though, I go to writers' conferences where, they have agents and publishers available for you to pitch to. I've never done a single pitch, and I don't want to. And I didn't actually, with this, as I say, they approached me, and then I said, okay, how about if we did this? And they said, yeah, great. So I haven't even given them an outline or a synopsis of the book I'm going to write.
Well, so congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, what books have you written? Maybe you could show us each of your books.
Okay, well, first one is A Greater World, which is set in Australia in 1920.
Okay.
Then the Indian one I mentioned, and it's got a strange title, Koringi Flowers, because the Koringi flower only once every 12 years. And strangely enough, this is the year, and this is the month. They are the whole of, if you go to Kerala up into the mountains, they'll be covered in beautiful purple flowers, and people travel from all over India just to see it, and they won't get another chance now until 2030. Next one, Letters from a Patchwork Quilt, is this is my only 19th century book, and it's set partly in the industrial north of England in a place called Middlesbrough, which was the cradle of the iron industry, and partly in St. Louis in Missouri. Mm-hmm. So it's 2 sides of the Atlantic, that one. And that's called Letters from a Patchwork Quilt. Then The Green Ribbons, which is an English country village, and it's about a governess, an orphaned governess, who is forced to seek work in a country house in a little village. Then The Chalky Sea, which was the book that I never planned to write, and it's actually mostly set here in Eastbourne. And when I moved here, I had no plans at all to write a book set here. As you will have gathered, I like to choose more exotic locations. But as soon as I got here, I discovered all kinds of things about what went on in the town during the war. And I lived here in my teens and knew nothing about it. Nobody ever mentioned it. So I started to dig and discovered that half the Canadian Army was based here at one point. And so that was the roots for the story. So that's World War II. And then having written that, I got besieged with messages from people saying, oh, we need to know what happens after the war, please. So I wrote The Alien Corn, which is set in Canada in 1946 to about 47, 48. And that's all about the experiences of a war bride and carries forward characters from the previous book. I am just, it's the third book in the trilogy, The Frozen River, is at the editors at the moment. But meanwhile, my most recent published book is The Gamekeeper's Wife, which is in the immediate aftermath of the First World War, and it's set on a country estate in England, and it's a classic across the class divide between, you know, the rich heir to the country estate and the widow of his gamekeeper. And that's a book that happened because I was staying in a gamekeeper's cottage, and I started to think, oh, I wonder who might have lived here. And lying in bed, the story came into my head, and I thought, oh, I've got to write this.
You're a very eclectic writer. You've got all different eras. That's very interesting. I like your covers. Your cover artist is very good.
Jane Dixon Smith. She's a genius.
Yes. Now, how can we find you?
You can find me on my website, which is www.clareflynn, and that's Clare without an I, CLAREFLYNN.co.uk. You'll also find me on Amazon if you, I've got an Amazon page under Clare Flynn, which is of course my own name. I don't have a pen name. And you'll find me on Facebook, author Clare Flynn. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter, where I've got a shortened version of my name. I'm Clare Fly, so CLAREFLY. And yeah, that's all of those places.
Thank you for coming. I've been talking with Clare Flynn. This is Author Talk with Richard Lowe, and please subscribe to the video down below. And thank you, and we'll have another video out soon. Thank you very much.